not taking it that serious. I could beat him. No, you can't. Don't let your ego outdo your skill.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blue Line Voice Blood, Sand, and Smoke podcast. Today's guest is absolutely amazing with a stellar resume. Retired sergeant out of the Broward County Sheriff's Office, 34 years on the job. SWAT, undercover, narcotics. Worked in 1980 South Florida. The department where cops got its start was down in Broward County. He's been a martial artist since 1958, 7th degree black belt. He trained in Japan with the Tokyo Metropolitan Riot Police. He is a use of force expert witness and ethics instructor, founder of the Crime Wave Solutions, Officer of Survival, police sworn columnist, past the uniform, and an author of 4 books and still counting. And I probably forgot something, but Marty, Katz, it's awesome to have you, man.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to be here.
So let's get started. And the first question I always ask is, where were you born and how did things get started?
I was born in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I was there for a couple of years, and our family moved to Pennsylvania, Greensburg, Pennsylvania, where I started my martial arts training. We moved then again to New Jersey in 1967. Graduated high school, did not get along with college at all. Came back, had a bunch of just jobs. Eventually, I was teaching karate because I started in 1958, and 2 of my students were corrections officers, and they got me started in thinking about law enforcement. I had no idea what law enforcement was. In 1973, I took the test, passed in the town that I graduated high school with, had my karate school, and for the next 6 years, I was a police officer there, became a field training officer, and that was the basis of my training because a lot of my officers that trained me were Vietnam and Korean War veterans. The discipline, the fact that they could do everything, no specialization, was so great. But I got tired of being in the snow in New Jersey. It was a smaller department. It was Livingston, New Jersey. A great department, but smaller. And I decided to try Southern policing. And in 1981, I went to Florida.
So walk us through the martial arts. How did you get into, in 1958, how did you get into that?
I got punched in the face. And it was like some kind of baseball game or softball game. I got punched in the face. It was embarrassing. And at the time, there was a martial arts school in the town I lived in. Also, there was a judo, which was a little more popular than karate back then, taught at the YMCA. So I used to go to the YMCA and we used to train. And the way we learned how to fight was in the jump circle in a basketball court. We weren't allowed to leave that circle. You had to defend yourself. So I was learning karate and judo at the same time, and eventually karate won out, and I became obsessed with it. And I went to everything I possibly could, all the instructors I knew in the area. Everywhere I moved, everything I did was always martial arts based, and it just became me, synonymous with me.
So you were in New Jersey, and you wanted it out, so you moved down to South Florida in the Broward County. What was that transition like for you?
When I went to apply for Broward County in 1981, there wasn't an opening. So I went to the city of Coral Springs, which was a bigger city than Livingston, but I got to learn about Florida law, kind of like walk my way in. And I was there for 3.5 years. In 1984, I went to the sheriff's office, and from there, my career just took off. It was one of the largest agencies in the country, fully accredited through CALEA, 6,000 employees. It was just the cutting edge of so many things. And it was just amazing to be there. I just took advantage of everything.
Do you remember your first assignment walking into Broward County?
Yeah, I was assigned to, we took over various cities in Broward County. So we would incorporate their city. And I started working in the southern area of District 1, which is right next to the Miami-Dade line. And we also were out west in the Everglades. So my first assignment, I'd go in my car and I'd drive and I'd get lost in the Everglades. I had no idea. The radios didn't work sometimes. It was very archaic back then in 1984. So I was there for a couple months and someone wanted to trade with me to another district. So I went to a District 4, which is the city of Lauderdale Lakes, which also happened to have the Bureau of Training in the same building. And that was like I took the genie out of the bottle. It was great. I started teaching right from day one because I was already teaching martial arts and I was a field training officer before. And I just took all the high liability courses. I just trained like crazy and we kind of meshed from there.
What do you think that the streets taught you that the academy couldn't, especially down in Broward?
Well, it taught me that when seconds count, help is just minutes away. You have to be your own survival. You got to learn crazy handcuffing techniques because you might walk into a place and have to arrest 4 people with 2 pair of handcuffs. What do? It taught me that no matter what happens, always tell the truth. Even if you lose the case, no one was going to take away my job, my freedom, my pension. So I just said, okay, I'll do what's right. And I learned how to work the street. I learned about command presence. I learned about talking your way out of things. If I could sweet talk someone into handcuffs, that's better than doing a use of force report later that may get looked at negatively. So I learned how to be self-sufficient.
Kind of like verbal judo.
Exactly.
You mentioned just a little while ago, you going into the cities. So Miami-Dade. So would you work alongside those various agencies when you guys went into the cities?
Sure. When I worked in undercover narcotics, we were kind of like crazy. We went everywhere. Everywhere drugs moved, we did. If we would do a drug bust on a bus and the person was going to New York City, we would call DEA and work out a substantial agreement so we can go up there and do the drug bust in New York with these people and they can do the jail time up there. So we worked very, very well with surrounding counties, with DEA. Like I said, we took over almost every city except Fort Lauderdale, Pompano. Yeah, it was interesting. It was just really, we had a great rapport with everybody.
So the 1980s, and I remember this, younger folks may not, but that was the crack epidemic.
Yes.
So you were right in the heat of that.
In fact, we taught DEA how to do interdiction on buses and trains and planes. We would do crackdowns on the weekend where we'd arrest hundreds of people. But we were ground zero for the crack epidemic in America.
So so you guys were doing the bus and everything. Were they manufacturing the crack in Broward County, or how was that? How was that linkage set up?
There was one person driving around with a van that was a mobile crack lab, and they would drive around and they would, make it and deliver it, sort of like a roach coach kind of thing. No pun intended on roach coach. Also, we put out a video. We arrested a dealer, and this woman made a video on how she makes crack, and we had that available for other departments to look at. So we were pretty much definitely ground zero for all that going on.
And you were explaining before we went on the air about how you guys would do back then, do your search warrants and do your raids. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. We did the first crackdown. It was televised around the world. What we did was we arranged a bunch of search warrants. And the first thing we did was we swept the streets for anyone loitering. We had loitering signs up. We'd arrest all the people hanging out. Simultaneously with that, we did about 30 search warrants. The SWAT team went out and did search warrants. Then what we did was we set an operation up where we would be the dealer on the street, getting the people coming in to sell the narcotics. In fact, if you watch the cop show, you see that quite a bit. We'd have an undercover officer out there as a drug dealer. The person would pull up in the car. They'd make the deal. The undercover officer would remove his hat, and we'd sweep in and arrest the person. We had a couple cars to block them in, both unmarked and marked cars. And then we'd go into the crack houses that we took over, and we would use that as a operating center to process the prisoners, and our detention unit would be there to take them to our jails. It was a very smooth operation. We had a lot of the PCs that were written ahead of time because all the stuff was standard. Just got to add a name, what we did, and add what made this case different from the other one. And it worked out really well.
The TV show Cops, was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Broward County was like the launching area for, yeah.
We were the first one to do it. And it covered a wide variety of things that we did. And a lot of my friends were on it. I was in the background a couple of times because I was working SWAT and narcotics, so I couldn't be out in the front. But it was a different way of showing what went on in the street. It's like a ride along that you could, you watch the world through the windshield of a police car.
I was always shocked that the cameraman could keep up with the chase.
They were
You
in
know,
pretty
and
good shape. Yeah, they
they're
were
pretty
pretty
good
cool.
shape. Well, I guess you have to if you're doing that. How did you land undercover?
I was working patrol and I was on SWAT, and I went to a street crimes unit, which is like a plain clothes working. And my partner that I worked with for many years went over to organized crime. We both taught firearms. We were pretty tight. And there was an opening, so I put in for it. And next thing I know, I was in the interdiction unit doing buses, trains, and planes, looking for drugs going out of the state and all the money coming into the state. So that's how I kind of went in, because someone in there knew what my ability was, and when I put in for it, I got it.
How did you maintain yourself in undercover?
One is you have nothing on you that looks like you're a police. I grew a beard. I had unmarked sports cars. Even the weapons I carried a Beretta 380 Model 84. So it wasn't really like a police gun if you're pat down somewhere. We always had pagers back then. There were really no cell phones then. We would go and hang out places, just look for what my partner and I would drive down the street. If we saw something going on, we'd get involved, and we had a radio in the car, a walkie-talkie. We had our set programs. We had bus schedules, train schedules, airplane schedules. So we could go there and look at people, their mannerisms, watch how they moved. We also were watched constantly by defense attorneys to make sure we didn't violate anybody's rights. So everything we did was approved by the courts, how we approach people, our conversation we had with them. And also, since I was a former SWAT guy, I was always working out. So we'd play racquetball between drug deals or something and wait for the pager to go off and then go do the deal and go back to playing racquetball.
You mentioned defense attorneys always watching. So were they like simultaneously coming out while you guys were out, or?
Well, a lot of times, like let's say we're doing a bus interdiction. The bus would pull in. We'd have maybe 10 minutes to do 4 buses going north out of Fort Lauderdale. So we'd go on the buses and identify ourselves in plain clothes. All we would have would be a green Broward Sheriff's Office raid jacket. We would introduce ourselves, no guns visible, show our badge, tell them they had a right to not talk to us, and ask them, is that bag theirs? If it wasn't their bag, then it was found property, we could then take it and search it. People would have their arm linked on a bag full of cocaine, like 3 or 4 kilos. That's not my bag. Okay, fine. So, we made sure that we followed the law, what the Supreme Court did. In fact, one of our cases went as far as the United States Supreme Court, as far as to stop and talk to someone. We never blocked their egress. We never made them stay unless they were under arrest or became suspicious. We'd have a drug dog outside the bus that had such a great nose that it could pick up one marijuana reefer outside the bus. So we had it down pretty pat what we were doing.
When you mentioned stop to talk, is that more like Terry stops?
Yeah, but it wasn't a suspicious thing at all. It was random talking to people. And
Right.
if they said they didn't want to talk to us, we just moved on. There was no need to get involved and make bad case law.
Right. Yeah, you don't want, that's right. Don't make yourself case law, right?
Right.
In the 1980s, there was a lot of drug trafficking coming in through South Florida, and that I have seen a lot of shows and read a lot about the narco trafficking with aircraft, boats.
Yeah.
So was that was hitting the Broward County area as well?
Sure. There were landing strips out in the Everglades where drug planes would come in, and either they would drop their load in the Everglades itself, or they would land and be unloaded there. So there's a lot going on back in Florida in the mid 80s with the drugs.
How close did it ever get to going sideways when you were undercover?
Not that much. We kind of were pretty good at what we were. I mean, there were some times where things would blow up. Mostly it would be physical confrontations. We used overwhelming force so that, especially on SWAT, where people could have guns in their holster and they wouldn't even have time to draw them. So we trained very much what we did. We had a very large organized crime division, very proficient SWAT team. So we were pretty good at what we did. So there wasn't that much of a problem.
You like to teach law enforcement. It's a passion of yours.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you're still teaching. So what gives you that drive? Why do you still do it?
Well, I was fortunate. I had a field train officer who probably looked like Malloy from Adam 12. He was phenomenal. He took an interest in this little kid. I was 21 years old. And when he moved on, I got his patrol division, his patrol area. He took a lot of time in teaching me how to be a policeman. I was a 21-year-old kid. I had no idea what I was doing, basically. I just took a job because it looked pretty cool. The weapon I had was a 6-inch 38 revolver. I mean, there was nothing high-tech about it. But I learned, and he took the time, and a lot of the other guys took the time to groom me, to take me through when I had a mistake, learn to be devil's advocate with reports. So every paragraph linked to the next paragraph so you could build a case, not to worry that it's personal, always tell the truth. Doesn't matter where it goes. As long as you tell the truth, you're good. So I decided to give back. And I realized that everyone I trained could eventually be my backup. So they better be the best they could because I got to rely on them. So it just spiraled. Back in Florida, we were paid by the school board, not overtime, to teach. So I was teaching on the firearms range 4 hours a week, and I was also teaching officer survival and handgun retention 4 hours a week. So I had like a steady income that I didn't work details. I just taught. And from that, it led to all the other high liabilities: first aid, first responder, defensive tactics, driving, ethics. And I just made a career out of it.
Ethics is a big topic of mine. Is that something you hit home on?
Oh, yes. Neil Troutman was my instructor, and I became the Florida assistant director for the National Institute of Ethics Trainers. And I teach a lot of courses on ethics. I mean, after 9/11, the police could not be looked upon with more higher, and we were on top of the world. And then as time goes on, some cops started doing some stupid stuff, so we fell down again. So ethics is so important. You had cases where the Miami River cops down there where they were shooting drug dealers. You had the Rampart Division in California that were doing bad things. You had a sergeant in Louisiana that was doing burglaries. So what I do is I always incorporated some ethics training into everything. And even with use of force, you bring it in. I survived very busy, active career with not being, too much hassle from doing something stupid or internal affairs. I just did the job and proved that you could do the job no matter where you worked without getting in trouble.
Based on your trainings and what you do, you taught in the academy down in Florida, Broward County area.
Yes. When I was in the training division for a while, I was sent over to the police academy to be the instructor coordinator, where I had to coordinate 9 different types of police academies at the same time. And also I was able to teach everything but the actual criminal law, because you either had to be a lawyer or grandfathered in. I wasn't grandfathered in. So the 770 hours of the police academy, I could fill in when an instructor wasn't there. And it was a lot of fun to be involved in that. The last day of the police academy, we we act as field trained officers and put the recruits through all kinds of stuff. So it was good. It was excellent.
I remember my time in the police academy. I'm still friends with my assistant director. And I said to him, if it wasn't for doing simulations as much as we did, because they helped so much doing those simulations during the academy, I wish we could have done them more.
Yep.
But the simulations were amazing help. And even we did use of force so much in the academy. I think I know we did more than what was required by the state, but it was so helpful doing that.
Well, you are taking a everyday citizen and turning them into an urban warrior in, 700 or so hours. So you have to make sure that they have all the bases and all their questions answered, because You're going to be out there with a gun on their hip and the right to take someone's life and freedom. So you really got to make sure they're properly trained in all aspects.
Let's get into the Tokyo Riot Police. What did you bring home from going over there?
We had a field force in our department. That is another assignment that patrol had, that they were kind of like, they had something else. So there was a riot, the field force would get together. There were huge squads. I think we had about 4 of them with like 80 people on each squad or something. And when I went over there, I didn't go over there with anything particular other than to do martial arts. And I happened to run into some police stuff the first time. And I was invited to watch how they train their riot police. So when I was there, I picked up that and brought it back to the department. The second time I went over, our sheriff had met a commander from the police department and asked me to deliver a gift for him. So I went there the second time. And while I was there, it was the time that there was a G7 conference, and Reagan was there. A lot of it was a big deal. And I was staying in a hotel, and the Red Army fired some missiles, and it landed at the Canadian embassy next to where I was staying. So I got to go out and just be a part of that on CNN, of being one of the first people on the scene, having my background with SWAT and everything. It was pretty cool. I interacted with the police, right place, right time. And then I brought back some of their way they do investigations. Most crimes in Tokyo are solved by confession. In fact, there's very little crime there. If you left your wallet on the street, it would probably be returned to you with your money in it. So it's a whole different mindset. So their policing there is more like a community thing, where they go in and they walk into people's houses and record your belongings. There's very little crime there, but punishment is very severe. So I brought back that concept here and just tried to integrate it into my daily work.
What can a dojo give a cop that the range can't? What can a dojo give a cop that the range can't?
Well, first of all, you're developing your command presence. You're developing your ability to be self-reliant, because at some time you run out of bullets. Sometimes the gun doesn't work. Sometimes you're in too close. You can't use a weapon. So you learn how to defend yourself. One of the things I bring up that I use all the time is, when I was practicing when I was younger, I always wore glasses. And I learned how to defend myself in close to protect my head so I didn't lose my glasses. And then I learned that if I lost my glasses, how to get in real close and use their body against them. So I've taken that concept into training with law enforcement. In one of the articles I write about, is 2 enough, where if you have a pair of glasses and they break, you have another pair. If a contact lens comes out, can you put your glasses on? Kind of like a proper mindset for law enforcement. Officer survival mindset is what I teach. So I've taken the concepts I've learned in the karate school, where you're the one on the floor, there's no backup, you got to make it through to the next level, and brought that into policing.
You have spoke about training, and you chased everything that you could for training, and you teach it. So why is that? I guess that would be a message for the audience and the law enforcement officers out there. Why is training so important? We know why it is, but for those that may think it may not be.
Well, a couple things. One, if you worked for me when I was a patrol sergeant, you'd have to know where everything was in your trunk of your car in the dark. Because if you're on a perimeter, or you're somewhere where you can't have light and you need something, I learned that from SWAT. You know where everything is in your car. You know where everything is on your belt. You train so that you never get it wrong. Not that you get it right, that you never get it wrong. You don't have the luxury, because most police work is action versus reaction. You're playing catch up. So you have to have a clear mind, not be worried, not have problems from home, don't worry about getting your ass chewed by the chief later on. You have to survive that minute. And that's where training and mindset comes in, where you are out there. You are visible. You don't know what's hiding in the shadows. You don't know what's around the corner. So you have to be aware all the time. You have to control the scene by your voice, because if you pick up your fist like you want to fight, you're not going to, if there's 10 people, you're going to have a problem. You got to sweet talk people into things. You have to create people. You have to be so articulate, and you have to say things. I said things that, here's a perfect example. I was in a meeting with a homeowners association, and a robbery went down 4 kids. And we went out. I left the meeting. We were searching around. I found the car, got my patrol rifle out, and I was giving him a felony stop. And I was saying things that the neighborhood was not very happy with. It was a black-white situation, and they were getting kind of upset, and other cops had their guns out, and it was all said and done. I went to the parents and said, I said those things because I wanted the kids to be shocked so they would be alive for trial. All these young cops out here with patrol rifles and guns, I don't know what all their skill is. They might have done something to shot. Who knows what would have happened? But your kids are alive to go to court. So they kind of thanked me. Could I do that today? I doubt it. But this was back in around 2006. So I led by example, like being able to talk my way into where I wanted to go. And that was kind of like the hallmark of my officer survival mindset course, becoming a 15th century samurai in a 21st century world.
If you had the opportunity to, well, let me back up. Do you still go into academies throughout the country or no?
Not as much. I'm more writing now my books as opposed to teaching. Also, I found that my way of teaching somehow doesn't go too well with some of the upper command now. They're kind of hesitant about doing certain things that we did. I mean, times change. I understand that. Times changed when I started. Times changed when I left. So if someone wants to learn, I will teach them. But departments aren't jumping on board like they used to. Who knows why? I don't waste time kind of exploring that. That's for other people to do. I'm all about accountability. I've taught people how to work with the body cam so you can get the camera to work for you. I just realized that if someone wants to learn, the teacher will be there, but it's not as popular as it was before. That's why I'm putting everything into book form, because maybe then the individual officer can get the book as opposed to waiting for the department to come forward.
You mentioned body cameras.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. In fact, I think it was 2013 or 14, the agency I was working for at the time, we didn't have body cameras. It was a work in process type deal.
Yeah.
So I went on Amazon, but there was an incident out in the Midwest that was very publicized on the media. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can get a body camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. It was, I think it was like $65 back then on Amazon. It was like a little lapel that I wore on my vest.
Yeah.
And I tell you, and I was the first one in the county that was wearing it. And I remember, backup would show up and be like, is that a camera?
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like a shock, like, oh my God, he's wearing a camera. And I knew myself as a police officer, like I always treated people the way I wanted to be treated. Right. I wasn't an a-hole. Most times I wasn't, but there was a time and a place for everything, right? That
Yeah.
the presence and the command and having to articulate yourself and work yourself through situations, you have to use your voice. But, and I didn't have a problem if I cussed on the camera. It was what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's who I am. It's how I handled the situation. But I loved the body camera. When that thing came out and I bought my own and I'm wearing that thing, and it just painted a story. And I could go back to that, and it helped me with my reports.
Sure.
And it helped me my use of force if there was any. So I really enjoyed having a body camera. Were you down in Broward County? Were you in the phases of body cameras or no?
No. But later on, what I did was when I ran for sheriff in North Carolina, one of the questions came up, and I said that I'm all for body cam, even though it shows only one dimension. If you learn to work with it, if you learn to use it to your advantage, like you learn to use any other tool on your belt, if you learn to use your words to your advantage, it could be great. It could be the difference between win or lose. I mean, like you said, for use of force, it's perfect. Just remember you're on the body cam, and remember that the body cam the picture is not the whole scene. It's just one aspect of what's going on. And if you learn how to integrate that one aspect into your case or your report, yeah, you're going to be successful.
I think also body cameras, that comes back to the ethics part and
Yeah.
accountability, right? And still, unfortunately, we still have a few bad apples in the bunch that forget that they have a body camera on, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
utterly surprises me
Yes.
sometimes.
Well, that goes back to the do you have 20 years experience or 1 year experience 20 times over? That you fall into that category when you talk about that.
When you were mentioning your training and field training and officers needed to know their car in the dark,
Yeah.
uh, down in the state of Florida, there's a lot of take home cars.
Oh, yeah.
So was Broward County one of those agencies that was a take home?
Let me tell you a little bit about Broward County, what makes it so unique at the time. We had take home cars. No matter if you were a certified officer, you had a take home car. And plus, we had a bunch of other cars used for undercover work. But I could set up my police car the way I wanted it to. I would go and have other lights put on. I'd have all kinds of things. We had radios in the car. We had CBs. We could really do whatever we wanted with the car within policy. Every 3,000 miles, they were changing tires. It was fantastic. You could take the car if you lived in Palm Beach or Broward County or Dade County. So you could try. At one time, you could take your family in the car. They decided that was a bad idea. But you could use the car as long as you had on appropriate clothing, had your radio, your badge, and your firearm with you. You can use it to go shopping, whatever. Cars are out there all the time. One thing I want to bring up that made Broward County a really unique department. Our firearms policy was we had a list of firearms, and you could, as long as you qualify with that firearm, you can carry it. They would provide the holster and the magazine or speed loader pouch. So I went through, over my course of 23 years as a department, about 7 or 8 different duty guns that I would try out and have. As a firearms instructor, I'd go to the range, practice with it, and I'd carry it. And they would give me the holster, and they would give me the loading device pouches or whatever. So that made it really unique. Plus, we were allowed to carry a second gun. So I always carried a Model 60 on my ankle almost my entire career. They also allowed us to have patrol rifles and shotguns. So yeah, I thought it was just a wonderful opportunity, and it was all in my take-home car that I went out in the morning. I got in my car. I'm good to go. I lived out of county. I drove to the county to where I patrolled and then drove home. It was great. They provided the gas, and it was a very great service, and it kept morale very high in the department.
Agency I retired out of, we didn't have take home cars, but we had, you'd have to drive to work and then you would have a vehicle that was assigned to you.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was the great thing. It was like you knew you weren't sharing a patrol vehicle with somebody else. And you would come into work, you knew your patrol vehicle, that was your vehicle.
Yeah.
And the same thing, we couldn't go crazy of, doing alterations on the interior or whatnot, but you could set it up to your liking. And you knew where everything was, where there was agencies that I did work for that we had to share police cars. So, I mean, that was somewhat difficult.
That's the worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get a shotgun and you have French fries down the barrel or something. It was really
Yes.
nasty cars like that. So I'm really glad I went to an agency with a take-home car.
Common sense self-defense. What is that?
I took the martial arts philosophies and incorporated in police work. When you're fighting with someone, don't fight them. Let them go where they want to go. Just help them get there using joint locks, pain compliance, pressure points. You're not in a fight. There's no weight class out there. There's no referee out there. And every fight a police officer gets into, there's always at least one gun present, theirs. And if you lose that gun, you're dead. So you use common sense stuff. You learn how to end a fight quickly and move on. You don't do like jujitsu where you go to the ground and try to get someone in a hole, because if you're in the street and there's more than one person around, you can't devote all your attention to the one person you're fighting. You got to move on. You got to kind of move between opponents sometimes, because sometimes you might be the only one out there in the situation. So yeah, it's using the martial arts philosophy of one punch stops a fight, know where to hit, know what time of day to hit the person, know, common perennial nerve running down the side of the leg is a great place for a nightstick or a nunchaku to hit the side or a leg sweep. You learn how to use the body to your defense so that you can immobilize them enough to at least cuff them and remain upright for the next challenge.
We spoke a little bit about earlier before we came on weapons retention, which is a big thing. We see, weapons retention's always been a big thing, but the videos that are out there now, there was never videos before. Now we could see the struggles with weapon retention, and we have unbelievable holsters and what have you, but suspects are still going for the guns. And walk us through your beliefs on weapon retention and how you taught weapon retention.
1983, right before I went to the Broward Sheriff's Office, I asked Coral Springs if I could take a course by Jim Lindell, teaches the Lindell handgun retention method. It's a 12-step process. Each step has 3 parts. So I took the course and pursued even more training with him to become an instructor under him. And when I started teaching in Coral Springs, I went to Broward Sheriff's Office, I started teaching handgun retention. Everyone who had a gun, whether they were detention or law enforcement, they had to go through the course. And I broke it down to about 4 hours, and it became a staple every year for our 40-hour in service. I had the opportunity, and I got a couple other people with me, took the course, and I got them up to become an instructor as well. And we taught handgun retention because when you're in a fight, you got to worry about that gun. No matter what the holster is, a bad guy can buy a holster anywhere and learn how to overcome whatever safety mechanisms are in there. And we had the Farland SS3 holster, which had 2 snaps and another way to move the gun, but it could still be in a fight where you're going back and forth. You can get that gun taken away. So you learned how to defend the gun in the holster, and at the same time, how to defend if someone is fighting for your gun in your hand or if they have their hand on the gun. So we made that a very, very staple part of everyone's training every year. Of course, 40-hour training every year is what most people took. Some were not enthused about other training. I found a way to help people around that on my shifts by offering incentive if they became deputy of the month or if they did well. I thought everyone should go to at least 1 course a year for advanced training on a department's dime. But we taught the handgun retention and made it mandatory. And I have to say, success rate is, I don't remember anyone had a gun taken away. So I feel pretty good about that.
I remember it was around 2010, I had a fight for my life. And long and the short, come to find out, the suspect knew jiu-jitsu. And I only knew a little bit about ground fighting, and it was 10 minutes. Now, 10 minutes.
That's a lifetime.
You're gassed. But during that fight, he was able to get, and we're on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. So he was able to get everything off my gun belt, everything, my radio, my mags, my handcuffs, shit went flying. But I do remember during that fight, he was feeling, right? And he's grabbing, I was a lefty, and he's grabbing on my left side. He's like, give me your effing gun. Give me your effing gun. And I'm like, I was so determined at that point. I'm like, well, I'm going home. Like, this guy, he's not getting the gun. I could tell you. And I fought like hell. But it just brought back a memory when you were talking about weapons retention. And thank God we had a retention holster. But I mean, could you imagine if that was 1975 and you just had the little button that went over that top?
He would have had the gun. He would have had the gun. Yeah.
So what is the biggest mistake in survival training, you think?
Not taking it that serious. Saying, oh, I could beat him. No, you can't. Don't let your ego outdo your skill. I mean, I know what it takes to survive. I would carry 2 auto knives, 1 in each back pocket that I can get to. I learned all my equipment on my belt was set up for survival. My mindset was, I'm going home. I'm going to end this quickly. I'm going to overwhelm them with techniques, and that's it. I'll take my choice. And I learned how to write a report to defend myself if I had to. I learned how to use the law to my advantage. That's what you need to do, and that's what newer cops have to learn how to do that. Not to go out there with all that heavy gear on and how they look now. They all look like they're Delta Force, which you may need that equipment. We didn't use it. We didn't need it. And we survived rougher times, I think. Back then in the 70s and that, you had very radical groups that were actually throwing firebombs at cars. We taught to roll the windows up all the time. I mean, we had some serious problems during the Vietnam War era as a police officer. That training still works good today. Unfortunately, some of the bosses higher up are not on that mindset of living through those years. I look at people that became a cop like in 2004. Now they're commanders. I mean, what kind of experience do they have? I don't know. So I'm not really criticizing. I'm just saying that I know what I had to do and I know what works. So I'll stick with what I do because it seemed to work well for me.
You're right about when you're just speaking about that, and I'm thinking as you're speaking, what you do on the street, your use of force encounters, and your report writing, it's all about articulation. I think that's one word in law enforcement that we don't use enough as articulation. And why did you do what you did?
Okay, here's something I did. I was assigned to the Pompano Beach District in Broward Sheriff's, which is their largest patrol district, and an opportunity to be a tactical sergeant, detective sergeant, patrol sergeant. And as a use of force instructor, I had next to my desk, a use of force chair. We'd have so many reports every night of use of force. I'd have the deputy come in, sit down, and we would go over it. I let them know right then and there if their use of force is going to be, they're going to get deputy of the month or they're going to have an IA complaint. And I let them come in and we talked. And because I was kind of like, I don't know, say radical supervisor, I was more a progressive supervisor. The use of force chair concept worked very well. That we would talk it out, we'd explain it so that, and they would learn how to write the report. That they have to, if you write something, you have to be able to defend it. You don't write something that's untrue and then try to struggle to defend it. Just learn how to write it so that it's true and how to defend it. I'm not telling you to make up something because the truth will always come out. Eventually there'll be someone with a camera somewhere. There'll be someone heard something. So stick with the truth. If you're wrong, you're wrong. You're right, you're right. But the use of force chair was one of the concepts I came up with that became very popular because the deputies knew going home that night, because everything had to be done before they went home, where they stood. So it kind of let show that a boss was in their corner.
It's always good to have a good boss like you that would sit down.
I wanted to be the boss that I could work for. That was my goal when I was starting out. If I could work for me, then I think I was okay.
You hear a lot of horror stories out there.
Yeah.
But no, it's good that I'm sure you still have friends that you're still connected with that worked under you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just from the report.
Yeah. And the stories I write for Police One talk about some of the things I did as a supervisor to get camaraderie on the shift, different things that were outside the box thinking, because you can always think inside the box when you're dead, your coffin. So I tried to be creative as possible because I wanted them to have an exciting career, not just bored of patrolling the same streets, but to know that if they did something good, they were rewarded. If they did something wrong, we discuss it. If it wasn't fatal, just so they know what to do, that when it hits the fan, that they have resources.
Right. It's common that you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
In law enforcement. I think it would be who to say that our mistakes, while we do make them, try to make them as minimal as possible, but also work through your mistakes because that's the only way you're going to learn.
In my book, Pass the Uniform, I have a chapter. I had so many car accidents as a young officer that I went to every driving school available and became a driving instructor. So I basically took lemon and made lemonade out of it. I was told that if I have another accident, I'll never be in a car again. I was just useful stupidity, excitement, whatever. But I went to all these classes and then became a driving instructor. So I realized that a career is built on trial and error. As long as there's someone there to help you out, a good field training officer, a good, zone partner, whatever, take advantage of it. And I'm living proof that you could screw up a lot and move forward with a career.
What has changed in survival training and law enforcement today?
From what I see, uh, there's a little bit of an ego involved where I'm a cop, you're not kind of thing. When I go around to departments, I look at their training, and a lot of the training they have is on the computer. You need hands-on training. You need to be pushed to the limit of your ability. I mean, if you should be able to run a mile for every minute that you are going to be in a fight, or even more. I mean, you have to be in shape. You have to have a mindset that's equivalent to what you're doing on the street. So I think that a lot of the officers, it's like the monkey experiment, where eventually the monkeys don't know why they're doing something, because generation after generation after generation has whittled away at their survival or their instincts. So now they're just bopping around, not knowing why they do something. They know they do something, they don't know why they do it. I think the monkey experiment has taken over a lot of law enforcement, where you're just going through the motions, think you're going to do it, but it's not. And today's times, with cameras and the political division that we have, I think it's just as serious as when I was coming up in the '70s when I started.
Yeah. You mentioned cameras. Not only are you wearing a camera, there's a camera on every street corner, and
Yeah,
then there's the person holding the camera. So you know, I always knew in the back of my head, it didn't matter if I was wearing a camera. It didn't matter where you went. You were always on camera. So
yeah. And
you
those
have to be on, you have to be on your A game.
and those cameras are gonna be released to the public before you have a chance to tell your side of the story. So you have to be aware that you're playing catch up again, action versus
Yes.
reaction. So you're always one step behind, so you have to be that much faster than what
Yes.
you do.
Police One. So what year did you retire out of Broward County, and how did you get involved in Police One?
Uh, I retired in 2007 after a tragic event, and I wanted to continue doing police work, but I didn't wanna do it there in Florida. I had enough of Florida. I was not really burnt out, but my I felt my skills were kind of getting. I was having a little hearing problem. I just wasn't as moving like I wanted to. Had I had I been in a desk job, I might have stayed longer. But I was the senior supervisor on a midnight shift of a lot of people, so I wanted to keep myself involved. So I contacted Police One, had a long conversation with Doug Wild, who was the editor in chief, and I came up with the idea of Pass the Uniform as passing on the information, which then became a book, and I just started writing for them.
Do you write monthly, weekly,
I submit periodically. There's a lot of
periodically?
people writing. There's a lot of people doing it. When I find something of interest, I'll send it to them. If something, if I want to make a comment about something, I'll send it to them. But mostly now it's working on my books. Since I retired, I wrote 4 books, and I'm working on a couple more now.
So you have to have outlets in law enforcement. And what I mean by that, when it's your day off or when you retire, you need to have that outlet. You need to have something to keep yourself occupied and keep yourself motivated and keep yourself going. Because I think the worst thing anybody in the first responder community can do is to take a seat back in the sofa and watch TV and think
Sure.
everything's going to be okay. Well, our minds go so fast during our careers. It's amazing. And then when we come to full stop, and I think this goes back to you going into Police One, it helped you. It gave you that outlet to, I don't know, keep your sanity, guess.
Totally agree. I and my wife, we taught karate in Florida, and also kids, family life. Now there's grandchildren. So I realized that when you came home and took off the uniform, you basically go back to whatever life you were. That's your life. Police work is great, but your family was there before, and your family will be there after. So make time for them. Don't be hyper vigilant. Don't take it home. Don't worry about something. Of course, When I ran a detective bureau, every night was lots of phone calls, go through cell phone batteries like crazy. But yeah, sometimes it is a lot of work, and sometimes you miss things because of, especially when you work narcotics. When drugs move, you move. Doesn't matter what you have. Doesn't matter what tickets you had to a game or a sporting event or a concert. You got to do the job. But eventually, you find time to make everything balanced.
How did you maintain yourself for all the years in law enforcement to stay sharp and stay on your game?
I always played devil's advocate with what I did. Every time I went to training, I'd always pick the biggest person to be my partner, so I have to work harder in training. I taught karate all the time. I did crisis rehearsal so that everything became second nature. I went to work knowing that we're going to work as a team, and I'd take from people and take their ideas. And I would, I was very controversial in a lot of things. My favorite line in supervisor meetings were, "Don't correct me incorrectly." So I had a reputation of being a outside the box kind of guy. But that was my fun. That was my enjoyment, was to make sure that the person working for me could someday say, "I want to be a supervisor like him if I was a supervisor." So I kind of like just had a great passion for the profession.
How about you were a supervisor for long enough, and I'm sure you saw this was burnout, and which is very prominent in the law enforcement community. Was there signs of that when you had a deputy that was underneath you, where you would say, pull them aside and ask them, everything's okay? Do you need anything?
Oh, sure. I made it a point to meet with. We had 8-hour shifts. I made it a point to try and meet with everyone as much as possible. Let's get a cup of coffee. Let's see what's going on. I would let if I would be the kind of supervisor, if a guy came up to me and said, "This is going on," I said, "Well, run with it. See where it goes. I'll support whatever you need. Get a couple other guys." We had, like, if we had something that happened outside their area of responsibility, like the city of Pompano, it happened in another city. We have countywide jurisdiction. Get a couple guys, go research it. A guy would say, "This burglary looks a little strange." Well, why does it look strange? What's wrong with it? What can you do? I let them make their decisions. I would say, "What do you need? You run the scene. It's your scene. Even though I'm the supervisor, you run it until there's a problem. Tell me what you need. Let's make it work. What kind of things you need?" Also, my department took New York City ComStats and perverted it into Power Track, where every 5 weeks we were grilled by the command staff unmercifully. It was so bad that 2 sergeants, I believe, committed suicide over the course of my career there because the accountability was brutal. When I was a detective sergeant, I had to know every case in a huge city, and every 5 weeks, they wanted to know how many AFIS fingerprints we got from this scene, what's with that case, why did that miss, why did that person didn't answer the phone this way. It was brutal. Eventually, it stopped because it was so brutal, but I learned to defend myself and to help us each other as a team. So their craziness made my shift better, so to speak.
There's one thing a department could fix tomorrow. What would you say it should be?
Give the people more training to what they need. Look at the weaknesses they have. Evaluation. Every supervisor should know on his shift who his ticket writers are, who their call answerers are, who their aggressive people are, and whatever you find lacking, work to make it better. Now, that they may not want help, but offer it. You have to give them a safe place. No, I'm not saying safe place like it's being kind of looked at kind of funny today. You would say safe place, but give them a place where they can develop, because when they're on their own out there, all they have is whatever they have. And if they're lacking somewhere, it's going to come up. So I say training to make them better is what I think they should do. And remember, if you're a boss, that you came up the ranks too, hopefully, the right way, so that you know what the journey is.
We see that throughout the country in law enforcement, that there's some bosses that come up unexpectedly, I should say.
Yeah.
And you scratch your head and say, how did that person get to where they are right now?
Yes.
which is, and I'm sure you saw it in the big department, and some of those promotions always shocked me, and
Sure. That's
just
why I kept up with the, "Don't correct me incorrectly" statement I got from my mother. Yeah, I mean, I've seen people get promoted because they contributed money to the sheriff's campaign, I've seen people get promoted because someone went to bat for them. As long as if they get promoted, great. As long as you do the job, I don't care how you got there, just do the job correctly.
right. What is the what's the next step for Marty? Where are you going now? You're writing another book, and explain your, if you don't mind, can you read off your books
Okay.
and tell us about them?
The first book is Pass the Uniform. It's a book about me being a field training officer, and my recruit says, "What about this or what about that?" And I go into one of those stories about, you know, the war stories, of a 17-year-old kid that could bench press a Buick. Now you got to fight him. So that was the first book I got, which I did in 2007. And then I decided, well, I kind of like this writing stuff. So I had an idea. When I was the supervisor at Port Everglades, which was the second largest passenger cruise ship in America, I had an idea for this book called Hot Potato. Hot Potato is about a police officer who goes on a ship and is taken hostage. It's a Russian ship, and it goes into this whole big espionage with the SEALs. A lot of work went into putting it together, research, and it took off like it blew me away. It of my entire life, I never thought this would happen. With the 5 stars, the reviews, it's just off the charts. It just inspired me to go and then do a sequel with the same character called Blind Revenge, which follows up with after the cop gets saved, what happens to him the next time, which is now going to a third sequel, which just, I never thought I'd be a writer. I barely could, get an A and get a good grade in English in school, but it happened, maybe because I write good police reports. And then just for something to change the subject, I wrote a science fiction book called From Another Dimension, which is basically like a Twilight Zone, but using quantum physics and other ideas of things I'm just filling my time with now. So yeah, I'm busy writing. I got another book. Like I said, I'm working on 3 right now. I think it's great. I did my time in martial arts, did my time in police work. I'm kind of benefit now, and I hope it can inspire other people to take advantage of the fact that they were successful in whatever they did at whatever level, and just enjoy life.
Are you available on social media platforms at all?
I'm everywhere,
Everywhere. Awesome.
everywhere, because I'm trying to promote the books. I'm trying to talk about good policing. I put out something quite regularly on hundreds of police sites, words of encouragement, things about training, just things that I see that happen that need to be addressed in a way that people can understand it, and try not to be too controversial, because I know that every time you put something on social media, the other side, whatever that may be, gets involved, and next thing you know, you're having a war of words. I try not to fight on it, just say my piece and move on. But yeah, I'm available everywhere.
Can we go back just a second? And I want to touch on something that I missed. You worked in the port
Yeah,
with the cruise ships.
yeah,
So that's a huge responsibility.
yeah. First of all, when I worked at the airport, I was a detective in charge. It was a Hollywood Fort Lauderdale International Airport. And I had a hard time communicating with people. This was before smartphones. People all over the world. So I created a language form. The top form was English on NCR paper, and below it was the top paper was their language. Were you involved in a burglary, a theft, whatever? They would check the boxes, and it would go through to the paper below, which was English. So I would hand the paper to them in their language, and they could fill out the box, because it would take too long to go through dispatch and get someone that spoke a language from our call center or whatever. So I created this form, which I write about on Police One, and the person would sign it so I could look at the form and say, oh, there's a bad guy. And went to court, I had the actual document of a person that didn't speak the language in my hand. It was a huge success. It was out of a need from not being able to speak with someone from France, Germany, Italy, whatever. So language. So then after that, I went to the port as the first supervisor. And that was during the first Gulf War. We locked down the port, and I was working 90 hours a week. I was in charge of the day shift and evening shift and spent most of my nights there sleeping in the firehouse. I made like 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week overtime. It was incredible. Then I got involved in the cruise ships and bringing in aircraft carriers from around the world for Navy days, and they come in as a port of call. On any given day, we would have 50,000 people coming off a ship, 50,000 people going on a ship, and then all the trucks and buses and cars that brought supplies. It was incredible. And it had one of the largest fuel depots for the eastern part of the United States. It was an unbelievably wild time to be in law enforcement. And that's where the book Past the Hot Potato came from. Just actually doing all the scenes, the fight scenes, everything on one of the fuel tankers. So it all kind of, I took advantage and interacted together to create, what I did.
So that was a high vigilance, high security area.
Oh, yeah. I brought in the Kennedy aircraft carrier and the Theodore Roosevelt at the same time. So we had like 10,000 sailors. You couldn't let boats tie up to the mooring lines. It was during the Gulf War. It was amazing. I brought in the Ark Royal, which was a British aircraft carrier, and I kept some of the SAS and Marines stayed over, and they trained I put together a training program with them and the Broward Sheriff's Office, which was a 2-week phenomenal time. We bring in some of the other ships from NATO that had a lot of females on board. So it was kind of cool what was going on at the same time. It wasn't a lot of like homicides and burglaries. There was more of controlling masses of people, which was then gave me a new skill in policing.
Yeah. Well, Marty, it's been an honor to have you on.
Oh, my pleasure. Totally to talk
this was
about
I don't even think we covered half of everything, to be honest with you. I don't.
Hey, I'll come back in the future. We'll go for part 2.
We got to do it. We got to do a part 2. So if you just stand by, I'll be with you in a second.
Okay.